We believe that collaborative conversations will lead to better outcomes in the world of mental health. Welcome to the Lift and Make Lighter podcast.
Well, welcome to the Lift and Make Lighter podcast. I am Austin Heaps, or Dr. Heaps, here at Levo as well. We're here today with Zack Butterfield, and I'm excited about today. Zack is a certified mental health counselor, BCN, which is a board-certified neurofeedback specialist, and he's also the founder of Butterfield Counseling. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, it's Butterfield Counseling and Neuralfeedback.
Butterfield Counseling, yes, awesome. Yeah, he's an author. I wanted to bring that up. He is an author as well, and excited to hear about the book and a little bit of what is in the book and all the good stuff today. But
yeah,
Zack, before we really get started, before neurofeedback, before therapy, before the book, everything, who was Zack?
Zack, growing up, is a really nerdy, really scrawny kid who did love hunting and found his way through high school. Loved reading, loved hanging out with my friends, and then always had like a pretty big passion for biology, anatomy, physiology. In terms of then like the hunting aspects, I loved all of it, and I had the idea that I could be a neurosurgeon or a surgeon because there's nothing about, like the process of like hunting an animal and gutting it that like was bothersome to me. It was all fascinating to me to see different organs, the process of life. I've always loved that. So might maybe sound like a little bit of a serial killer, but I loved the whole thing.
That's awesome. Hunting in the outdoors and the mountains, and the experiences that you learn there are invaluable, right? Just, leading you to another step of understanding too of the biology piece, the anatomy piece. I think there's a lot of value there. Yeah, it's not for everybody. Right?
No, not for everybody.
I definitely understand that. But the challenges you learn on the mountain too. I mean, the mountain will break you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The mountain will always win if we put ourselves in the wrong spots. But yeah, pretty awesome. Cool.
Nature always wins. So yeah.
Small town.
Yep. Grew up in Enterprise, which is between Mountain Green and Morgan, probably population 500, and grew up with like goats and sheep and a cat and a dog for a short period of time, and just have always loved the outdoor life.
What a cool place to grow up and be a boy.
Yeah.
Right? All the things.
Yeah, it was great.
You can ride your four-wheeler motorcycle around with that.
Yes.
Yell that all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Not living in the concrete jungle that I like to call it.
Yeah. I get tired of the city life at times. I need space. I need mountains, the outdoors.
So what prompted you then to did the book come first? Did the therapy come next? Like what avenue did you?
Yeah, so my career path was I was pretty committed to being a neurologist or neurosurgeon or pursuing that path. And then I served a mission for the LDS Church in Mexico City. And I found a lot of fulfillment helping people navigate like addiction, substance abuse, family challenges and stuff like that, kind of beyond just the religious church aspects of it. And then there were several things in my personal life. People really close to me started struggling with some fairly serious mental health issues. And it was more than just like an empathy for them. I found that I was really, really interested in their experience. And I'm really grateful for these people that they were fairly open about what they were going through with me and that I had that level of trust with them. And so it's kind of during that time that I pivoted from going down like a biology path to a psychology path, because I found that there was a lot of interest of that to me. And then like going through my master's program in mental health counseling, I was pretty I loved my program. I learned so much about therapy. I learned so much about counseling, but I just always felt like there was this missing piece with me that I wasn't learning as much about, like biology, neurology, and like, because like when we're doing talk therapy, like what other organ are we dealing with of the brain, you know? And so when I graduated and moved back to Utah, my first job had the option of like, they needed another therapist that learned neurofeedback. And because I had a ton of biology classes, they offered that I might be a good fit for that. And it felt really right to me because I was looking at getting like my psych nurse practitioner or PA or whatever. And then I was just so done with school. I wanted to practice. And so like none of those were appealing to me. So I got into neurofeedback, became very quickly obsessed, like very, very obsessed. Got like certified in 6 months, which is kind of unreal. And then started my own company in 2019, focusing on therapy and neurofeedback, and have just grown since then. And I feel complete mostly from like a career standpoint, in that like still have some elements of talk therapy. I love doing supervision for my clinicians and doing neurofeedback. And so that while that was taking place, I also found that clients that would get referred to me or come to me commonly had like rural backgrounds, and like small towns, we know that like word spreads fast, and you're gonna like trust the same people and open up to the same people. And so I found that I did have a consistent flow of people from smaller towns, smaller communities coming to me. And I think one of the reasons I've connected so well with them is because, one, I grew up in that. I love that lifestyle, and I'm still continuing that lifestyle, especially through like hunting. And so I could relate with metaphors and stories and stuff like that and get my point across because, you know, like in the hunting community, we do share a lot of stories. That is how we bond. That is a tradition of it. Absolutely. And I found that they could learn counseling ideas or like healthy living and stuff like that through stories. Like I could convey that. Yeah. And so I kind of just was stockpiling stories and ideas of things I had written, and really younger, nerdy me would have loved to have written a book. And so that was something that was kind of getting reignited. And then my dad wrote a book and published a book, and, you know, seeing someone like accomplish something kind of gave me the confidence of like, you know, I'll just go for it and do it. And so that kind of led to me writing the book. And since I don't have the technical skills, I had like a ghostwriter help me out, but was able to like make that come to fruition after like a year, and publish that in October of 24. And so it's called Hunting for Happiness, and it's like the behavioral health book for the rednecks and the cowboys out there. It's lots of hunting stories, lots of other stuff to try to convey healthy living, healthy lifestyle, how brains and bodies operate, but speaking to that group of people. Yeah.
How could we relate that? You know, I was reading a little bit of it, you know, when there's a lot of metaphors that I relate to, and I understand them and I love it. Yeah. But there's one in there that I wanted to have you touch on and maybe explain. And buck fever in normal life. What is that, right?
Yes. You know, and so buck fever, when you're going to like hunt and you get really excited, or like there's a lot of adrenaline, it is a thrill. It is, you know, like probably historically, like you have to get the animal, or you do not eat, you do not feed your family. So there's probably a lot of biological ties. So the process of hunting does put you in a really heightened state of awareness, alertness, like intensity. And so I use that to explain anxiety, because in essence, that is an anxious response, but like it it has an end date. It has a go away type thing. But the challenge with like a mental illness related to anxiety is it's consistent, it's persistent, it wears on you. There's not an end, or it's popping up so frequently with not a lot of relief that it's wearing your body down. And so that's the metaphor I use to explain that for, people that like that is their language. Those of us that hunt like have experienced buck fever. And even those who've hunted and not liked it, is probably that the buck fever was too overwhelming for them, which is also, very relatable in terms of, mental health as a whole.
Yeah, I thought about that a little bit too, of the population that you were seeing, right? And a lot of them are old. It might have been older, rural. What is anxiety? What is the depression? And it's not relatable because a lot of those old cowboys, grew up cowboy up. You move forward, and there's a lot of value there. I really value that, but they couldn't name emotions, right? And how do they correlate this anxiety that might be causing them more problems, but they don't know how to course correct, right? And what to do about it.
I do have a chapter in there about resilience too, about the cowboy up, like buck up mentality, and resilience is a great thing that's needed. But it can come at a cost, and it can come at a severe cost. So it is interesting that like when I bring up anxiety, like I'm at a hunting convention trying to sell my book or something like that, the pushback I get from maybe Gen X or like men in Gen X or men in the boomer generation is like, well, like everyone has anxiety, so like just tough. And it's like yes, anxiety at a start is a biological function. It is necessary because our whole bodies and brains are basically designed as defense systems to survive. And we as humans are extremely good at survival. What we are really good at then avoiding or exercising caution and defenses towards things that are dangerous to us. And a lot of those we have shared as a species, so like for me, snakes, for other spiders and stuff like that. And it is a level of shared danger that like we don't want to, that we all avoid, right? Like we all except for my youngest brother, we all hate snakes. He wanted one as a pet, But if things start being dangerous to you, and there's not separate parts of your brain that deal with like physical pain, emotional pain, it's the same pain network, it's the same danger system. So if you're detecting a physical danger, so if I'm like holding a gun to your face, which is a physical danger, and there's an emotional danger where someone is like gossiping about you, criticizing you, judging you, right. It's activating the same part of the brain. Yep. So your brain is learning how to survive. And so where anxiety is helpful is we survive. Where it is unhelpful is if it is actually preventing us from engaging in like healthy patterns because things have been dangerous to us that maybe shouldn't have been. So you incorporate that in relationships, So, let's talk about like maybe the cultural factors of why rural communities haven't sought mental health treatment. Right. They tend to be more religious, and the early, founders of psychology, Freud and stuff like that, weren't very religious friendly, or explained it away, or were negative towards it. Right. Because that could be received as a social judgment, that could put up a barrier of like, that's a dangerous thought process, that's a dangerous philosophy, because it's attacking something that is of like big importance to rural communities. It's a core value. And so then you get, cultures that then perceive danger in each other, and many in rural communities could have then an anxiety about going and getting mental health care or behavioral health care or any type of that, because there's a perception that their entire identity is going to be attacked and criticized and brought down. And thankfully it's advanced a lot more since then. But I know I got wandered off topic a
great.
little
Yeah.
bit, but anxiety can then become a danger if you're starting to get anxious in multiple situations. Your defenses are high, and it's probably understandable why they got high, but it eventually becomes harmful to your life. And then, like, how often is that impacting you trying to, like, change new jobs? Is that impacting your relationship because you can't address something? You just avoid it, or that starts arguments, or you criticize, or, how much is that impacting, your ability to go out and socialize and connect? And then, like, at some point that can impact your spirituality. At some point that impacts, job performance, relationships, all the things. And so that's where it becomes a danger. And so it's very easy to then at some point perceive things that are dangerous that are not, that would be beneficial to you.
Yeah. I love it. No,
So,
all valuable. I love everything that you're talking about. I'm curious to know, what were you seeing often that kind of led to the book, right? Like, I know we talked about anxiety, but what else were you seeing, whether it was in practice or previous life? Like, I mean, just what did you start noticing that said, this is what I think people need? And it is directed towards a specific group, but what were you seeing most of that you're like, this is why?
Situations related to trauma. I define trauma, just so like we're all on the same page, as an event that impacts your sense of safety, worth, or connection to others. There are the obvious traumas tied to war and tied to sexual abuse. And then there's a lot of subtle traumas that can build up walls for people. And I was finding that in rural communities, there were both these big traumas and subtle traumas, not unlike the rest of the world too.
Right.
Like there's all of these, but because you tend to be more isolated, you tend to think that everyone is living the same way around you. And so you tend to then accept these traumatic experiences or even abusive situations as normal. And I was seeing a lot of things that were causing harm for people, but they were suppressing and avoiding, and that was leading to addictions, relationship problems, and all sorts of things. So, but because it is hard to admit when you've experienced a trauma or you're not aware of it, there had to be a lot of work done to like break down some of those thought processes that like these behaviors actually are very inappropriate happening to you. This actually, even though it was like normal for you and normal for people around you, does not mean that that's the best way to live or develop as a human being.
That's awesome. I love that you took initiative to write something that's relatable. I think that's really hard. It's hard to explain feelings, emotions, trauma, and how it's affecting them, and then the people having enough insight to recognize, that, and then make the change. And so I think a book is a great way for someone who feels like they're a little even guarded to go get help initially, right? They can read a book and learn a little bit more about that and how maybe they can implement some things that can be helpful for their daily management of that.
Yeah.
And, you got to read it, right?
Yes.
But
which is also why I did an audiobook too.
No,
because not everyone can or wants to read.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I'm glad that you did that. Again, the book is called Hunting for Happiness.
Yeah.
And it's on Amazon.
Amazon and Audible is the best ways to get it, or if you come across me at like a hunting convention or in person or whatever.
Cool.
But,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to touch too on neurofeedback.
Yes.
Neurofeedback it's been around a little while, but for some reason I still feel like people know the term but have no idea what neurofeedback really is, how it's performed, how it's helpful, who it's for. So not that you need to answer them all in that sequence, but if you were to explain neurofeedback, how would you do that?
I explain it with 3 metaphors. So your brain should operate like a thermostat in your house. So thermostats keeping your house in comfort temperatures, And the other way to expand that metaphor is that if you have a basement that's cold, because the air doesn't reach down there, how the HVAC is set up or whatever, or you have a room in your house that faces the windows face the south and just bakes in the sun all day and it's hotter than the rest of your house, you can think of that in terms of a brain, that like maybe one part of the brain is hotter than the others, but maybe one part is colder than the others, meaning like it's not as activated, it's not as engaged. Maybe there's parts that are over engaged. But we conceptualize every mental illness as there's some part of the brain that is dysregulated or consistently outside of the comfort temperature of your brain, for that metaphor. For example, aspects of anxiety that we've been talking about could be that your logical brain is overactive, it's overanalyzing, it's over-judgmental, it's overcritical, and that usually then turns towards yourself at some point. And if that part of your brain is way overactive and it's not incorporating the emotional part of the brain or others or stuff like that can be a neurological basis of like what's going on for anxiety for you. So, what neurofeedback is it basically is like training a dog, where you're giving a reward, you're giving a treat every time it's doing a behavior you want. So neurofeedback's a non-invasive therapy or intervention, because we're just basically giving your brain a treat every time it's getting closer to regulating or is regulating. And how we do that, which is like why it's like a fun therapy, is that clients will come in and sit, we'll connect our equipment so we can be reading and seeing the electrical activity of your brain. And they pick a show to watch. And we have like all the streaming services. The key part is it has to be something you enjoy. It has to be something you like. And we put like a dimmer over the screen that blinks light and dark. And when your brain is performing the behaviors we want it to, just like a dog, we're giving it the treat by you're able to see your show. And when your brain stops doing what we're asking it to do, the screen goes darker, you can't see your show. And so in that way, we're rewarding the brain to regulate. And so in essence, your brain is teaching itself how to behave better, how to make better connections, how to slow down, how to speed up, depending on what is needed for your brain. Then the third analogy is it is kind of like an exercise. So if you were to just try to train your dog in one sitting one day, your dog might remember to sit later on that day, but it will wear off eventually. And so you have to be consistent with it. But it does take a lot of brain energy to do these types of exercises. And so it's important for people to practice good brain health in terms of hydration, nutrition, and like breathing and getting oxygen to their brains for these functions. So that's how I describe it in terms of concept. Other interesting things people ask is like how long and like what's the benefits of it. So I'd say like an average mild or moderate case of anxiety or ADHD we get, where maybe therapy hasn't been helpful, medications haven't been helpful. I'd say that usually they start noticing some benefits between sessions 5 and 10. They start noticing more consistent benefits between 10 and 15, 16, 17. And then because it's similar to dog training, you can't just stop. Once people get to good places, then we start backing down every other week and stuff like that. So it's around 20 to 25 for that. Granted, if people usually find their way to us, there are usually lots of complications. And so that's maybe on like the lower end, lighter end, and can go beyond that. The other thing is, even though I'm helping your brain operate better and regulate better, does not mean that suddenly your relationships are going to be fine and your life's going to be fine. But we find that a regulated brain is able to make better changes. And so you still need aspects of talk therapy and stuff like that. You still need to work on your relationships. You still need to do these things, but you're usually in a much better place to be able to do so.
So much value there that you're offering both of those things.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like our brain, it's a muscle.
Yes.
Right? And so when we train it that way, and we make those changes neurologically, we're behaving better. Our brain's recognizing it. Our neurons are reacting in the way we want them to.
Yeah.
It sticks.
Yes.
It stays.
Yes.
Right. And so that's a treatment that you perform, you have done, you work really hard, 20, 30, 40, whatever the session amount is, but it sticks.
Yeah.
Right. And then the talk therapy comes in and you are able to continue to work on our behaviors that we aren't, correcting just through neurofeedback.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing. Those are results and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have people who come and then don't come back.
Yes. There's a few situations where people come back. It's usually chronic health related or a substantial change in hormones like menopause or puberty and stuff like that. But people make significant changes and then do not need to come back more often than not. And granted, during this whole process, we're encouraging, like, what are you doing in your life to keep your brain regulated, which does tie to improving your relationships, your health, your nutrition. All these other things are things that we have to promote. But, like we're prone to getting, a concussion at like any time that we go driving or sports or whatever. And so there's lots of things that can disrupt your brain. But our goal is to provide a consistent benefit and change for people.
What about substance abuse? Is there a place for neurofeedback for those who are?
Absolutely. This is how I conceptualize substance abuse from how it starts until how it ends. Speaking of how brains regulate, your brain will find a way to regulate if you're choosing not to regulate it. So I would say that more often than not, if someone finds themselves in an addiction, it's usually trying to regulate something that has been a big trauma, a buildup of traumas, or there's some aspect of their lives they're not managing. And so any type of addiction or repetitive behavior is usually avoiding an emotion, and it's usually a poor and damaging attempt at regulating. Is alcohol going to help regulate your anxiety? Yes. But is it also then damaging your liver, which will then end up making you feel anxious again at some point? Yes. So in some aspects, the addiction is helping regulate some aspect of it, but it's usually a damaging aspect of it. And so, if someone comes to us with an addiction for neurofeedback and they've usually tried, everything, they've tried therapy, they've tried all these things. And, some of them benefit to some extent, they're able to reduce some of it, but they can't reduce all of it. And that's because their brain isn't self-regulating. It's needing something else to regulate. And so if we're helping their brain do that, they then need less of these outside sources or even internal sources that are addictive to manage that. However, if the reason you are abusing substances or pornography or whatever is because you have not healed from childhood sexual abuse or whatever, regulating your brain isn't going to heal that for you. And so helping your brain get to a better place and healing the brain damage that was done from the trauma should help a significant amount of that addictive behavior or whatever. But you still have to do the emotional healing and social healing, but it'll be easier having a regulated brain to do so.
Love that.
So yes, so that's how it plays out with addiction.
Cool. Yeah, I love that piece. I feel like in my practice, I'm seeing a lot more those who are needing help with some type of substance abuse and or addiction, whether it's pornography, gambling.
Yes.
It seems to be an uptick in that, and vaping and nicotine, all the things.
Yes.
There's a lot. And medications take us to a certain point, right? I look at it like a bridge a lot of the time, and which is great, but they oftentimes need more than just that, right?
Yeah.
They have something going on and they keep coming back saying, well, I'm still relapsing. I'm still messing up. I'm still making these wrong behaviors. And even with us trying to do a little bit of CBT work, I'm like, we need more. Yeah. We need something else. We need to be working on our brain, right?
Yep.
There's inflammation that causes issues too in our brain, and we can address that. But does neurofeedback address a little bit of inflammation? I don't know that I don't know. And so,
Yeah, so there are lots of inflammatory markers that are seen in the electrical activity of your brain. So slow electrical activity in your brain deals with healing, cleaning, and restoration. So amplified slow electrical activity is a marker that there is inflammation. So
is that done through brain mapping? Sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
Is that something? And that's what you do initially?
The initial session, yeah, we do a brain scan, brain map. Officially, it's the QEEG, but like who's gonna say qualitative encephalogram? I probably would have said that wrong, but so yeah, like we casually refer to it as brain map or brain scan. Some people do mean different things when they say that. What I mean in my practice is we're measuring your brain with the equipment, 5 minutes eyes closed, 5 minutes eyes open, and comparing it to your biological peers. And that report tells us which parts are overactive, underactive, and stuff like that. And so that initial scan is then, and then that combined with your symptoms is what we are basing our training on.
Gotcha.
And wherever you do neurofeedback, doing a brain map or that scan makes it at least 40% more effective. So that's a very, very key component to success is it has to be tailored to what is dysregulated in your brain. Because and this was a problem that, if you're looking through the historical evidence of neurofeedback, there are times that we've only gotten 20% success. There are times we've only got 25% success.
Yeah.
But now that we understand brains better, they were trying to do the exact same thing for everybody with ADHD. And everyone with ADHD does not have the same brain. There's not the same problem. Same with anxiety, same with even trauma or whatever. There are some patterns, but even those patterns at best are maybe like in 40% of cases. And so customizing it to your brain and your brain's needs is a key part in your individual healing. But a part of that is then hard to research. That is hard to study. And so, you go through the actual methods of neurofeedback and of like their research studies, and the ones that are done really, really well usually end up with like a 70 to 80% success rate at reducing at least half of symptoms.
Wow.
And so, and that's where it's really fun for me because it is really complicated. We have to see people as individuals, because we have to incorporate all aspects of your health, your mental health, your lifestyle, and, go based off of that in terms of where do we need to help out your brain?
It's wild to me.
Yeah.
I feel like we should be shouting this from
I do shout from the rooftops. Yes. And the other thing too, to point out is like I'm obviously passionate about it. It's so cool. It is not a magical pill.
Right.
If you're coming to us, you have to put forth the consistent work to regulate your brain and your body. And granted, if you're in an abusive relationship, your brain is probably currently operating what it needs to in that situation. So helping your brain isn't going to make you suddenly fine in your relationship. But what we do see happening is regulating people's brains does help them make the necessary changes, whether they need to actually confront their spouse or significant other, whatever,
right,
in terms of improving the relationship, which does seem to then, can get better that way, or it gives them what they need to separate and stuff like that. That's obviously not our goal. Our goal is to help people have healthy lifestyles. But if your brain is just constantly in a danger state because you're constantly in danger, we're not going to change that.
Right.
But we are trying to help you regulate and so that you can make the decisions you need to.
What kind of patients would you say are most drawn right now to neurofeedback? Where are you finding like most success? And I might have another question as well of maybe we go back first to tailoring the neurofeedback. Right?
Yeah.
What is any differences in treatment compared to, and I know it's individual, ADHD is still different for every person, but let's say ADHD to PTSD or substance abuse, what would be a little bit different between
Actually, that sometimes there's a lot of similarities, and what we're understanding about a good chunk of ADHD is it actually is a manifestation of trauma. And for me in neurofeedback, I'm actually really less concerned about diagnoses, because I'm interested in what is happening in your brain and what is happening in your life. I'm interested in the function. And can I put a diagnosis or a category to that? Sure. But, you have to diagnose too, and it can get extremely messy of like, what is what,
it's frustrating,
and it is frustrating. And so even though I do think having a shared language, which it would be a diagnosis, is helpful so we understand what we're doing, there's actually a lot of overlap in the brain stuff. And so I'm a little less concerned. Like if someone comes to me and says, I have ADHD, you should know what to do. That actually means nothing to me. Right. What I need to know is, can you focus to conversations? Are you drawn to music and you can't read? Or you can read stuff like that, but if you're like listening to this podcast drives you nuts, Or is it that like your brain gets overwhelmed by sounds, and so you stop listening to your teacher because your brain is getting exhausted by listening to like all the little shuffling noises of all your classmates type thing. So I'm way more interested in what is actually happening than the diagnoses. And sometimes that's very hard to actually communicate, because like, how can you really put into like no 8-year-old is going to come to me and say, oh, I'm actually overwhelmed by the pitch of the tone of the voice of all of the men in my classroom. Right. Like how can anyone actually like put that to words? But if I try breaking down, where do we see this happening? Behaviorally and socially, that helps me look at like, okay, that part of your brain actually also seems to be pretty disrupted. That seems to be extremely relevant area for me to go after and help regulate. And so I'm kind of tying in your two questions. I think here is that if like the crown of your head, the parietal lobe, which deals with a lot of sensory activity, deals with like math calculations in there, some aspects of reading is in there, aspects of empathy is in there, perceiving others' facial expressions, emotional stuff like that. If that part of your brain is dysregulated, meaning it's overactive, that could look like ADHD. That could look like PTSD. That could look like anxiety. That could look like being extremely insecure because you're noticing every small change in everybody's facial reaction, and you're somehow perceiving that has to deal specifically with you. Yeah. And so that could look like a whole heaping amount of things. But what I'm interested in is that part of your brain seeming to regulate or not regulate? And so if we're talking about then like, I mentioned the logical brain with anxiety before. If I'm just looking at your brain map and I have no context of your life, and I see that your logical brain is overactive and the rest of your brain is at average, I can make assumptions, but I don't necessarily know your subjective experience. I could guess you're an overthinker. I could guess you're an overanalyzer. And I can guess because there's an imbalance in your brain that you're probably anxious and or depressed. I can make a lot of assumptions. Or the other thing is true. An overactive logical brain doesn't mean you're overdoing logical functions. It could be it's really hard for you to do logical functions. Yeah. And so you could be more emotionally reactive. You could be more overwhelmed. And I know that sounds a little bit like a cop-out, but your brain being dysregulated doesn't 100% line up with a specific behavior. And so that's why we need both. We need to have like a really great understanding of your life, and we need to see what is your brain doing and line those things up. So that's like the really fun part of we see what your brain's doing. Now, how is your life experience and what's actually happening? And then that's what we go after.
That's awesome. It's real treatment.
Yes. Right? Yes.
This is you're doing. It is hard work, and enjoyable all at the same time, right?
Yes,
and
I love
for
it.
the patient too. And wow, I'm sure you've seen a lot of rewarding experiences in your treatment, because I feel like mental health, we don't always get that win, right? And especially
not always.
in med management, a lot of times the wins are small.
Yes. And I think that the other part that's fulfilling for us is even the chunk of people that neurofeedback's not helpful with. One, we're checking off a big box, but also if we're consistently seeing from our brain scans that your brain is consistently dysregulated, even though we're rewarding it, what on earth is dysregulating your brain? And so, because your brain is not operating on its own, it's extremely tied to your stomach. It's extremely tied to your immune system. It's extremely tied to your hormones. What we do find as pretty helpful is we're actually able to provide a clearer direction for people of this is a path you probably need to seek out. Yeah. Or, you've tried talk therapy, you've tried neurofeedback, you've tried medications, you've got blood tests, all your organs look fine. Guess what? It is time to address your relationship, Right. And that's still people's choices,
Right.
At the end of the day. And I fully believe in that, but I believe that you should be, educated about the choices you're making and awareness. And so I think we kind of get wins in that area too. And the part of, where this overlaps with medication too, which isn't something you asked, but I think it's a relevant point. People do sometimes come to us because they don't want to do medication or they're trying to get off medications. Right. Neurofeedback is completely helpful in those areas, but just because your brain is behaving better electrically does not mean chemically it's got it all pieced together.
Right.
And so people are able to reduce medications with us. People are able to get help from this before having to do medications. However, it should be in people's minds that if you're needing to look at the whole approach.
Yes, looking at the whole person as a whole person, and there's a lot of different ways to approach it, and that's a treatment plan.
Yes,
right. When we come down to a treatment plan, it involves more than one thing.
Yeah.
In fact, if it's only one thing, it's most likely going to be just partially effective.
Right.
Right. And so helping people understand too that mental health, it's complicated, and I think I read something that I wholeheartedly agree with, that mental health is complicated to navigate in general.
Yes.
Right? We have a lot of therapists. We have different MDs. We have PMHNPs. We have all these different titles, right? And what do these people do? Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's complicated. It's like, where do you start? And how do I know if that's the right fit for me? And, so I feel like we do a lot of encouraging as well of trying to find the right fits for people, whether that's, hey, guess what? The med is, well, I don't want to take a med. It's a Band-Aid. I was like, well, that Band-Aid's allowing you to heal.
Yes.
Right. Which allows you now to go to therapy and allows you to process and address the behaviors that you're having with your spouse or whatever. Yeah. And then there's still the piece that might be missing. Is that neurofeedback? Is that, TMS? Is that whatever integrative type psychiatry or psychology aspect we want to talk about? But there's a lot, right?
Yes.
And it can be a high cost for people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think people get lost in some of that. But something I wanted to touch on just because of cost, I brought up cost, was it's totally worth it to find something that's helpful that you're going to engage in is worth the cost. And I'm thinking of a substance abuse case recently where he spent so much money going to rehabs, 3 or 4 different times. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time off work. There's a cost no matter what, whether it's financial or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a cost associated with that. And to find the things that are helpful and having really good outcomes, that's what we should be sending people to and encouraging them to spend their finances or other things towards that.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
I have a couple different thoughts, but to go back to you saying the Band-Aid, to me, that analogy blows my mind. And I'm sorry if I come off a little harsh.
No, I love this actually. So I want to see
But you're saying that the medication's a Band-Aid, but what is alcohol to you? What is judging other people? What is getting in fights? What is avoiding your issues? What is that? You're clearly fine with Band-Aids. So what are what's the problem? What's the problem with another Band-Aid?
Nothing.
And 2, it's not a Band-Aid if it's working towards healing.
Right.
I
love that.
So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, when people talk about the Band-Aid thing, it really gets under my skin. I get a little heated, jaded, whatever, I guess, from years of hearing Band-Aid. It's just a Band-Aid. We're not fixing root causes. And I was like, I don't necessarily agree wholeheartedly with that.
Yeah.
Because a Band-Aid promotes healing.
Yeah.
Right? It promotes something towards a better outcome, right?
Yes.
And some Band-Aids, sure, we can look at as negative. I would consider alcohol a bad Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Right? But in a moment for someone who's not sleeping or feeling depressed or whatever, in some small moment, I'm going to say that the benefits are this big, right? We got a laundry list of negative.
Yes.
But for something in their brain, they found some type of benefit, right?
Yes.
And so then they stuck with it, then addiction, blah, blah, blah. Things can spiral from there. But I know, I'm glad you touched on that because I get a little heated on it as well.
Yeah. But in terms of then like the cost or like investing in that stuff, if you have a very strong belief that you are worthless, a very strong self-judgment that you're not good enough, and then not only do you believe that, you treat yourself that way, did you actually expect to like improve self-confidence or improve self-worth if you yourself are treating yourself terribly?
Right.
And so I feel like for myself, a portion of my income, whatever portion you can put towards, has to be a self-investment. And this isn't an investment in my hobbies, which are very expensive. It has to be, what am I investing in for my physical health, for my mental health, for my emotional health, and my social health, you know? And I have to be contributing those things. And then like, guess what? I do feel pretty good with myself because I've been taking those times to invest in that. And so I think if you are organizing your finances in a way that is neglectful or harmful to yourself, I don't think you should then expect to feel better about yourself. And same with time, you know, like time is a resource, money is a resource and stuff like that. If you're not treating yourself well, why would you expect to feel better about yourself? So I'm doing that even though I feel like most of the time I'm mentally and emotionally healthy. I'm still doing that because I want to stay that way.
Right.
I'm also in a career that has a very high chance of burning out and taking my mental and emotional health at any time. And my clients don't deserve that. My friends and family don't deserve that. And so that's why like I have to consistently invest in myself regardless.
I love that you practice what you preach.
Yeah, I have to.
We have to, right? And if we're going to be professionals in a mental health space, we need to be practicing that, right? We should be taking care of our bodies and our brains equally as well,
yeah.
Right? And it definitely starts, I think, mental health just it affects everything.
Yes.
It affects everything. And we can find mental health in all aspects of medical as well. And I love making the connections there and inviting people, right? Encouraging people heavily to make the changes. What changes do you feel like you had to make in order to what do you do to keep yourself mentally healthy? Let's go there.
Boy, how much time do you have?
I think this is important because I love talking to people to see what they do to keep themselves mentally healthy or stable, or what are the things that they're consistently doing, right? I talk a lot about discipline with people. What do you find that works for you and that, maybe someone else might resonate with?
I would say that, man, that is a loaded question. I can go so many areas with it. To tie in neurofeedback briefly, how that's benefited me personally is, I don't know how to explain my personal experience other than this. I lost the ability to read completely after I graduated with my master's program. I've loved reading my entire life. I finally was at a point where I could read books for fun again. I sat down to read. I could maybe make it through 3 words and I would zone out of this planet for a half hour and then come back to reality. And my initial brain scan showed that I essentially had like brain damage in the visual parts of my brain. And I can't think of any time that I had a physical injury. Although that's possible. So I blame grad school for giving me brain damage. After 3 or 4 sessions of neurofeedback, I could read to my normal level again. I kept going because to be certified in neurofeedback, you have to do at least 10. And then what became crazy to me is situations that have typically stressed and bothered me were not bothering me anymore. And it was really weird to me. And I did not have an awareness of how anxious and obsessive I actually was. And so I think bringing down my anxiety and obsessiveness was very helpful in general. Yeah. Now, things that I've done practically, I typically default as a very logical person. Ignoring my emotions, I have found, has never been beneficial to me. And connecting and understanding my emotions, I would say, is the number one thing I've done for myself. And especially validating the emotions. It doesn't mean that like my emotions are going to change my decisions, but if I'm not aware of my emotions, I'm typically reacting instead of choosing. And I do think that people operate best when they are choosing or have a variety of choices. And I think ignoring your emotions puts you in a place where you're not choosing, you're reacting. So, how I did that practically, I had to expand my emotional vocab. Yeah. It's very easy for men that the only emotions we think we feel are fine and angry. That is not true. That's not even true neurologically, right. You know? And so for anyone to come in and say like, I don't feel emotions, it's like, you've disconnected that part of your brain that much, you know, yeah. Like, or, you know, all sorts of things. So I would say expanding my vocab, learning emotion words, and then also paying attention almost nightly to my experiences throughout the day and how they impacted me for better and for, well, not for better, for worse, because I don't see it that way. Because I see emotions as neither good nor bad. They are just providing you information about your reactions. Granted, there's some we do not like feeling, and then there's some we do like feeling. But I found that most of us in our lives are avoiding an emotion or believe it's a dangerous emotion, but that's not the case. I actually think one of the most useful emotions my entire life has been feeling stupid. And that feeling dumb and feeling stupid has been a drive behind all of my educational decisions and my studying habits and stuff like that. And so me embracing feeling stupid means that I don't react if someone is challenging my intelligence, because I'm now way more receptive of like, if there's something I'm saying that's wrong, I want to learn. And it's way more fulfilling to me having embraced my stupid emotion than, you know, coming across as a narcissist and like, I'm just like the smartest person in the room. Yeah. I love learning, and I love that accepting that emotion has helped like expand my ability to learn and grow. But I also find with trauma, people say they hate feeling lonely. People say they hate feeling worthless. That's also true, but guess what? They also hate feeling love, and they also hate feeling worth. And so those emotions are just as dangerous to them and uncomfortable to them as the ones they're trying to avoid. And so I find that you have to learn how to accept your entire emotional experience, and try listening to it. And even though I'm still having emotions, if I validate them and I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I feel that way, but that's not how I'm going to choose because I'm trying to improve this area of my life. I find that like, you know, like my agency and my choices are open to me. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing I've done. There's plenty of others, but like, yeah, I could go on forever.
Learning how to name emotions and own them.
Yeah.
That is kind of what I'm understanding there.
Yeah.
And if you were to encourage someone to learn how to do that,
yeah,
you know, from a therapeutic standpoint, and just learning how would you explain that to someone? How would you encourage them to learn their emotions and then owning it? But when you own your emotion, how do you take action on what you're talking about? You know, what's the next step?
Yeah, I would say that one, any experience we have, even this conversation here, is going to bring up a multiple emotions. It's not a singular emotional event, right. You know? For me personally, you know, well, okay, I'll explain this. when I'm with like a client doing this or suggesting people to do this, I really just say Google emotion words and scan through them until you find one that resonates with you.
Yeah.
And if we're trying to like, make peace with anxiety, keep finding emotion words until your anxiety is at peace. It's probably going to be 3 or 4 at a minimum. If you're feeling upset or stressed, you're probably looking for at least 3 or 4 pieces to the emotional puzzle. So I would say that you've got to break down those things, but like I'd say like in this conversation here, it is very fulfilling to me. It does add to my worth. That's not an emotion I'll need to process.
Yeah.
Like that's not something that's gonna be keeping me up at night tonight. But if I'm trying to think of an example I can't share that would keep me up at night.
I'll be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, I a few years ago had a business that was going terrible. It was terrible. I'm in a financial piece that was frustrating for me, and employees that were frustrating, and things that were not going well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I was never used to having this type of anxiety levels. I was, playing sports, thought I could regulate pretty well.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm waking up in the middle of the night, just boom, awake. I'm anxious. I want to throw up. I can't even name what's going on. And I'm in my closet, man.
Yeah.
And I don't know what am I doing here? Like I'm standing in my closet thinking, this isn't me. I'm a mess. And I have no idea what to do at that point, right?
Yeah.
I'll be a little vulnerable and say something like that.
Yeah, I can say business stuff too.
Yes,
because I am making changes both like from a business structure and then like a personal role.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's probably most fair for me to just share like my personal role.
Sure.
That I'm having to do less individual talk therapy and individual neurofeedback because I have a business to run.
Right.
And then also, I'm like, I don't have kids. I'm not like in a marriage. Like I'm the only one financially responsible for myself. And I have like made like even like starting a business, investments I make, I can take those risks. I feel like because it's not impacting me. But now I feel like I've built a business where people do have children that work for me and stuff like that. And I feel like that weighs heavy on me that although I'm not like they're responsible for their finances and those types of decisions, but I'm responsible now for creating a structure that helps them feel safe and comfortable to make a livelihood that are impacting children and spouses and all these things. And so like that weighs on me. And so I'm like, grieving this loss of this change in my career that I find very fulfilling.
Right.
There's aspects that I'm changing into I find very fulfilling. There's aspects I don't find very fulfilling.
Yeah.
And, trying to accept that like I'm making these choices. It is going to come at an emotional cost for me. I have to acknowledge that doing my books for my business is not very fulfilling for me, but I'm accepting that like the boredom and the stress and the annoyance that comes from doing that is painting a bigger picture that is something I am working towards, is something I'm wanting. And so I have to stick with those emotions at all, like at the point. And even though I'm making choices that are emotionally impacting me, doesn't mean I should just tell myself to buck up and like ignore it. I have to say, yeah, that choice is going to impact an aspect of my sense of worth. And that is a choice I am making right now. I can pivot in the future, but it's a choice I feel like I have to make right now. And I can make that choice because I feel like my emotions of worth do trust that eventually I will course correct in some things. And if that's struggling in my company, I do believe in diversifying your worth and your emotions. So then that means I just need to do more hunting, to build up my worth in those areas.
Well, I love the.
So I've got to diversify, in multiple aspects of my life.
I love that you said, I'm kind of going back to what you said, but you're choosing.
Right? Yeah.
It's a choice. It's not an impulse. You're not reacting. You're choosing to, you're owning those emotions. I love that. going back to hunting here, or what are you excited about? Like just in your life, in business, what are you working towards right now that's exciting to you?
Oh boy. Well, I feel like I've checked off a lot of life goals. So something that's exciting for me is trying to like make a meaningful relationship right now. So that's exciting. It is bringing up a lot of stuff I've buried, but I feel very capable of addressing it right now.
Yeah.
And so that is fulfilling to me, even though it is bringing up a lot of things I've avoided and suppressed. I do really find fulfillment in that healing I'm getting. In terms of like, I'm really excited to go back to Africa again. Yeah. I know that can be controversial, and I do think that there are some, from my perspective, unethical hunting practices.
Sure.
But for me, I am really, really excited planning my next trip, hopefully 2027, and hunting like an animal that's always been the top of my list. That is the most dangerous animal to hunt. It kills the most hunters. I'm hunting buffalo in Africa, and I'm so excited for that. And I mean, tying that into then like that to like the emotional state is I've wanted to create a business structure that if I get gored to death in Africa, it can exist and like
continue to run.
People aren't worried by me going and doing adventurous, dangerous things. And I feel pretty good that is established and continuing to establish in that too. So I feel like I'm getting fulfillment from what's developing in my business because it's expanding and helping a lot of people. My hobbies and relationship. So
it's awesome. Well, I want to ask you two questions. It's they're the same, but two different aspects.
Yeah.
One is if you could tell us one thing, if you wanted them to remember one thing about your book.
Yeah.
What would that be? If they read your book and you want them to remember something specific.
Probably the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, forget system exists to keep you alive. But it can become problematic for you. That's probably the one thing I'd have people remember is lean into it. It's saving you, but then also it can become problematic. And if you understand and know that really well, you can gain that awareness for yourself to make better choices, to protect your safety and connections and worth. And then I feel like you can understand other people better, yourself better.
Yeah. Same question, but applied to if you wanted someone to remember, if they're watching this podcast, they've listened, they've forgotten a little bit about neurofeedback. What's the one thing you would want them to remember? What type of person should seek out, possibly coming to get neurofeedback?
Yeah, I'd say do things to regulate your brain. And that applies to nutrition, relationships, neurofeedback, all sorts of things, like do things to regulate your brain.
Who needs neurofeedback?
Who needs neurofeedback? If other things haven't worked for you, come to us. If you feel like you're working through trauma and you keep getting stuck at the same part, come to us. If you have like a sensory processing issue that's tied to ADHD, autism, anxiety, PTSD, like sounds bothering you, visual things are bothering you, facial expressions are bothering you. I don't know if medication or talk therapy can do anything in that. So come see us. There are the cases of like what is under the category of like conversion disorder, which is like you're having seizures or chronic pain or whatever that like no one can find like the reason for it. The reason is that your brain is dysregulated. And so we're extremely helpful for that when the medical world says like, well, you're not actually having seizures, so there's no problems here. We don't know why you're shaking randomly at times. And so I'd say that we are very helpful in the areas that the rest hasn't addressed, but then if the others aren't being helpful, we can be too.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you today about something that you're doing that you'd want to make sure to address or let people know?
Oh man,
because I definitely I don't know what I don't know, right? And so is there anything that I really wanted to touch on this?
So tied into like a sister field of neurofeedback is a field called photobiomodulation. Really big name. It really is called infrared or near infrared light therapy. They've developed the technology where that can reach your brain because the light from the sun that comes through helps all of your body tremendously. So quick plug for getting more sunlight.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then it doesn't penetrate bone. And so they've developed equipment where they can get infrared light and red light to penetrate the skull, to like there's a clip up your nose. It's really uncomfortable. But getting infrared light to your brain helps repair, helps heal, helps grow. We're noticing pretty incredible stuff with that as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I love red light therapy in
Yes.
general, right? Like
Yes.
the benefits from red light. I got a red light box for my wife for Christmas. I've been dying to open this since like September.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like,
Yes.
I kind of did a deep dive on red light therapy and I've encouraged it before and I just hadn't used it. And then just in the past, like 6 weeks that we've used it, I feel like it has actually improved quite a bit.
Yeah.
And even from a mood standpoint, and it is like that near infrared. And I'll make a plug for that for sure.
Yeah.
I encourage people to look into it and to understand it. And this is new to me, the brain portion of that.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you think about healing and the mitochondria that gets repaired with the red light, like, man, and we can apply that to our brain.
Yep.
I mean, I can only imagine the future studies that are going to be happening with that and the impact it could have on, I don't know, brain lesions.
Yes.
Where trauma's happening. Difficult things there.
And really cool studies are coming out here at home at both the University of Utah and BYU with athletes with concussions, with Alzheimer's disease. I'm noticing extremely cool things for someone in my personal life that I got it for Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
Really incredible things too. And then how much time do we have?
We're good.
Are we still good? Okay. Okay. So to show kind of maybe like a progression of a client, I'll be very, very intentionally vague. I love working with trauma, and I have heard a lot of awful things. I do actually love working with trauma. Obviously, it comes at a cost, but again, it's a cost I'm willing to pay. I find fulfillment working with trauma. I would say I have a client that if I were to list all the, in my mind, worst things I've heard, this client has the top 10, and keeps breaking their own record.
Wow.
And I've seen them for neurofeedback for a very long time. Talk therapy and medications have not been helpful for them for 20, 30 years. And their trauma is so severe, they do have the DID, the multiple personality stuff. And it seems like we address one personality's trauma and another one comes with something more intense, Sleep is disrupted. Relationships are disrupted. They do have some good relationships, but a lot of social activity is really disrupted. They are doing fairly well in their career, but there's also significant disruptions that come at times with that. Where neurofeedback has gotten them is it seems that how they describe it is that there's less walls between their personalities. There is a little bit more of that integration, which would be a talk therapy goal. But talking to them has not been very helpful in that up to this point. That's starting to make progress. Things that were massive triggers, especially tied to times of year or nature events or like the torture they've experienced, makes things even like breathing triggering, which is very difficult under standard things of how do you help somebody whose breathing is triggering, And so neurofeedback's gotten to them to the point that those types of things are less triggering, less often. However, when a suppressed personality comes up and brings a new trauma to their consciousness, it has been very disruptive for a month or so. Haven't quite figured that out. From a brain perspective, I think that's fantastic because the brain is integrating and healing, but it's just dysregulating things again, right? Like that's very, very hard to do. Since doing the red light therapy, instantly much calmer.
Wow.
And granted that hasn't been lasting, but an instant calmness that lasts for a day, maybe 2 days. It has now been about 2 months, and if they are woken up by a nightmare, they fall asleep within 5 to 15 minutes instead of never.
Yeah.
And even with neurofeedback, if they had an intense enough nightmare, they could not go back to sleep. They could not regulate enough. But at least it was that was only happening a night or two instead of a month long kind of thing. And so it is. And then not only that, but I feel like their authentic personality that I've come to know is shining through socially in multiple areas. They've also set boundaries with people who are still abusive in their life, like they have never done before. And I'm like obsessed with it. And they're much more energized and all sorts of things. And I care about this person very, very deeply and have been invested in their journey for a long time. And neurofeedback progress can be really slow. It has been slow for them because of how much trauma they've had to unpack. Yeah. But the light has like really, really sped that up quite a bit, quite significantly.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing a bit on that. I'm glad we got to that topic because it's important. I think it's worth mentioning and pursuing more education on and understanding. So
yeah.
I thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being vulnerable here and sharing a little bit of your journey and the hard work that I know that you do daily, and your practitioners there do a lot of hard work and help people, and then it's so valuable and needed. And I look forward to see how you continue to grow.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, same. I love everyone in the mental health field, and I love talking, obviously, because I could do a lot of it.
We'll definitely need to have you back because, I'm sure there's a lot more we could explore.
Yeah, we could just tell hunting stories the whole time.
We'll make a hunting podcast. There's no doubt. I'm game.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Lift and Make Lighter podcast is brought to you by Levo, a primary mental health care provider. At Levo, we specialize in comprehensive mental health assessments, diagnoses, and treatments for all ages. For more information, visit levomind.com. That's levomind.com.